Let's go to Tom Switzer now, columnist with The Australian. Good to talk to you again, Tom. Now, we've talked before about how this military threat from the US is probably saving lives as we speak because it's stopping the Iranian regime from attacking its own people who have been trying to protest. And this comes after on the weekend there was a day of action around the world, including in Australian capital cities, where millions of people globally marched against the Iranian regime and in support of the Iranian people. There seems to be a global push for action or even regime change here. Will these millions of supporters around the world be disappointed?
Well, it depends on the outcome of these negotiations in Switzerland. I mean, if Washington's core demand remains what it's traditionally been, that is that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon, then in principle, a negotiated settlement should be achievable. But if the US demands shift towards more maximalist conditions where, the Iranians are not allowed to enrich any uranium, there is no missile capacity whatsoever, and support for their proxy militias, then the chances of a deal drop dramatically, and that would increase the prospects of US intervention again.
And if there is a deal, while that will be good for security in the region and global security, that is keeping Iran's hands off a nuclear weapons program, it might disappoint so many supporters around the world who want to see liberation for the Iranian people.
Look, I think President Trump is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I mean, if he does commit to a policy of regime change, he would conform to the expectations of his Israeli allies. And as you say, a lot of freedom-loving people around the world who detests Iran's Shia clerical regime that has committed awful human rights abuses to the Iranian people, particularly in the course of the last few months. But if he listens to the Saudis and other US Sunni allies in the Persian Gulf, they would be less comfortable with regime change, even though they detest Iran's Shia regime. They would prefer a diplomatic agreement because they want to avoid another Middle Eastern war, another refugee crisis, or another destabilising conflict like Iraq in 2003 or Syria during the civil war from 2011 to 2014.
All right, I want to bring you back to Australian politics now because your insights on that are brilliant. Anybody who's watching who didn't read your column in The Australian on Monday about Malcolm Turnbull should get onto the website later tonight and read that. But I don't want to talk about that now. I want to get your thoughts on the challenge for the coalition in regaining its strength and its popularity in the polls against the One Nation incursion. I think they need to be solid on core Liberal issues like national security, immigration, law and order, and most importantly, the cost of living and the economy. But they're constantly being saying, no, they need to go more to the left, apparently, climate change and the rest of it. I'm going to show you what the new deputy leader of the Liberal Party has had to say and get your thoughts. Here's Jane Hume.
If you are aggrieved, you tend to look to a grievance party, and that's exactly what Pauline Hanson's One Nation is. It doesn't have the solutions to get the country out of the slump that it is in. It certainly isn't a party for mainstream Australians.
Isn't that a bit of a mistake? Don't the Liberals need to understand that it is mainstream Australians who are flocking to One Nation, and while they might not have the solutions, the issues they're highlighting are the issues that are concerning so many right-of-centre voters?
Mixed feelings, Chris. I think it's certainly true that on net zero, mass immigration, costs of living issues that we've discussed before, I think the Liberal Party over the course of the last 3-6 months has been bleeding votes to its right, and the obvious benefactor is One Nation. But then again, I think the comments that Pauline Hanson made originally on Sky News with Sharry Markson, I think that was a real in-goal for One Nation that really hurt them because the Liberal Party does not want to go on that terrain. I mean, the vast majority of immigrants and their families integrate successfully into Australia's democratic culture. Yes, it is true that there are certain segments within different ethnic groups, including the Muslim community, who hold views that sit uneasily with Liberal values such as gender equality. And we've had controversies before. You mentioned Sheikh Khalili 20 years ago when he compared scantily clad women to uncovered cat meat who invited rape. But I think on the whole, the broad cross-section of immigrants who come to this country do integrate well. And the Liberal Party needs to be the party that represents those immigrants. Once it goes down the one nation path on slashing immigration to that extent and picking on races and different ethnicities, I think they will shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, wise words. They've got to be very, very careful on that ground. Thanks for joining us again, Tom.